And ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Welcome back. Once again, it is your favorite podcast, the one and only world famous Keepin' It Rio. And we have got today episode number 201. I'm on my way to my second 200 now, and I am very excited for today's guest. This is the first time you and I have ever met, and I had a little bit of a background from a previous guest, Blake Grissom, who was the $6 million man. I just found out he was the #1 rated residential roofing salesman in the United States, and I didn't know that at the time, but that's all we have on Keepin' It Rio as winners. So we've got ourselves a guy today that's been relatively new to our roofing industry, but he's setting the world on fire. I'm looking forward to hearing and learning a lot more about this young man. So without any hesitation at all, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome to the show, TJ Weske. TJ, welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
Great, Chuck. Thank you. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, it is an absolute honor. I'm looking forward to learning your story because, like I said, you're pretty new to the roofing industry. Why don't we'll kick this thing off by just getting a little background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll roll with it from there.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, like that area originally. A small town called. Are you really? All right.
I'm from Akron. Go. Yeah, I'm from Akron.
Okay. I lived in Conneaut, which is northeast corner. So that's a good hour, 20 minutes from Cleveland. I say Cleveland because nobody knows what Conneaut is. We had like 3,000 people in that town. So, but yeah. And, grew up, lower middle class and, had a knack to be very innovative. So I would say most of my adult life, I was searching for that, good source of income. So, I came out of bartending, to fast forward to my late 20s, and I'm 32 now. So I came out of bartending and, in Charleston here where I live now, bartending is a great industry to make money, but it's not the best environment. And there came a point in 2023 where I was kind of, I found God and I was like, okay, this bartending industry is just not for me. It's not who I am really. And I was drinking excessively, and I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic by any means, but when it's accessible, you're going to have a good time. So, yeah. And it was free. So, at one place, I will say, full disclosure, I wasn't stealing alcohol. But yeah, so, I was engaged at the time, and, I was like, I'm not going to be able to love this woman properly by being in this industry and being respectful and providing her a good future. Because first and foremost, my goal is to be a great husband and father. So, lead, provide, and protect. Those are my priorities. I wasn't in the position to do that. I was bouncing around from bar to bar too, just trying to find that right place to make the good money. And it was so unfulfilling. It put a lot of stress on her in particular, and I understood it completely because there's just so much inconsistency. And I'll tell you what, any single guy out there, if you're inconsistent, you're not gonna really be sustainable. A good woman isn't gonna stick with you. So my brother-in-law, he is an absolute legend in Northeast Ohio. He's been doing this for, I want to say 15, 16 years. Sorry, Charlie, if I got that wrong, but quite a long time. And, he's been doing well for him and my sister. And, he gets all these awesome toys and, there's always a little spark of jealousy in there. But first and foremost, I'm just so happy that my sister's very well taken care of and he's so passionate about it. And, when I was in Ohio in 2023 visiting them, he was kind of expressing his success and, his fulfillment in the industry. So in that moment, I was like, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to do it. I went with a company that was just starting up here in Charleston. And, starting a new branch is tough. It's a company out of Charlotte, and they had come down here. Great guys, love them to death, had a great learning experience, knocked a lot of doors every day, but didn't make any money because first of all, it was new. These guys were new too to the industry. And, there came a point where, I had lost pretty much everything. And I was at ground zero. And this company wasn't really cutting it out for me because I didn't have the means to continue to help develop something and, had to make a living. So, I hit this point of rock bottom and, by the grace of God, I ended up with New Beginnings and, met Blake, and the owner. The owner and I had coffee together one day, and I'm going to tell you what, these guys were not hiring. Um, you have to be very adamant, and you have to tell yourself, I don't have a choice. That's a huge thing that I've learned. Like, don't give yourself a choice, because if you do, it's likely you'll fail. You'll come up with excuses. I spoke with Toby, the owner of the company. We had coffee together. We're both people of faith. We talked about church, we talked about life. And then of course we talked about the industry. He told me, I'll hire you, but you have to come up with your own leads. Like, I can't give you leads. I'm not hiring right now. And in that moment, it was a hard no, a big hard no for me. I was scared. I had to make a salary. I was broke, and so I almost accepted an offer with a different company, which thank God I didn't, because this company, I think Blake talked to you about them. They were taking money from people and running. And this is the company I almost went with. No moral value at all. And it was scary. Like, I'm glad I didn't go with them. But yeah, I ended up with New Beginnings, by the grace of God. And my very first day, the big storm that Blake had touched base on in June, it happened my very first day. Blake was training me, and it was a storm that we haven't seen in decades. And my success has grown since that day.
Man, I'll tell you what. So we've got a little bit to unpack here and talk about. And I'm very excited to hear this, because it is very conventional and then unconventional, your story and your path so far. And I really appreciate what you said about the bartending industry. I have also worked in the past with several folks who have been a part of that industry. And you're absolutely right. There's great money to be made, but there is also a lot of temptation. There's a lot of opportunity to kind of get yourself off your path, and your ability to see that was potentially going to happen or was starting to happen for you. And then actually acknowledging it and saying, hey, you know what? I don't want to be this. I want to move into something different. I want to find the opportunity that's right for me, where I can be a good person, a good provider. That is amazing, because a lot of people don't. They continue down that path, and they never get to fulfill their destiny, as it may be in life. So I really appreciate that. And I love that you've got, family that's in the industry. So you were kind of able to see what it was, excuse me, before you were able to get into it and make that decision. And like you said, to not give yourself a choice, because you're so right. If you give yourself a choice, you usually, human nature as it is I'm going to take the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. And the path of least resistance doesn't ever get you to the finish line. It may eventually, but it's going to be a convoluted path, and you're not going to really get to reap the benefits of your hard work. And I think that, people are always looking for the easy way. So let's talk about your entrance into the industry. You said, you come back home, you get with a company that's brand new startup. You yourself have no experience. You're out there trying to learn on the go, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. I will certainly say that about the roofing industry. It is not easy. A lot of homeowners are not excited to see us come to their door and ask them if we can help them with their roofing needs. It's not like buying a new car or a new wardrobe. It's like, oh man, my roof. So getting into it in your early days, you go out, you're with a brand new company that has no reputation in your market. Nobody knows who you are. You know very little at this point about not just, the industry, but roofing in general, I'm assuming, because most people don't study how to put roofs together until they get into it. Tell me a little bit about the decision, first and foremost, how you chose the company that you did to start with. And we'll talk a little bit about those early days, some of the struggles that you might have had along the way that have helped you grow. But talk about how you got back home, and how did you choose this initial company that you went to work for?
Well, I would say I made a mistake in this, but at the same time, there are no mistakes. I met some great people along the way, but I went on Indeed and I applied for the first company I saw. And I looked at their website. They have a great reputation, where they're based. And, I went along with the interview. I met the manager. He is one of the most incredible guys I've ever met. Just a very, very down to earth, caring person. And I could tell that off the bat right away. So I was like, all right, I felt super comfortable with it, but not knowing the market in Charleston is my downfall. You know, I realized after knocking doors for a little while with them, people want someone local. It's a southern city. Like
Absolutely.
people want local, and it's difficult when you come in here and you're not local unless someone's in panic mode. Like with that storm we had last year, you got to be local. And so that was kind of a learning curve for me, but I got my experience there. I faced the hardest challenges that I'm going to face when it comes to rejection. I understood how to knock doors. I got good at knocking doors, and I learned to love it. And I'll tell you what, when you get into it, if you don't know what's going on, you're going to hate it. And that's the bottom line. But you have to find the benefit of it and have a good time with it. And also find your greatest rejections to be fun, because my first week, this man came to the door, and he was an elderly man, and he was he didn't have any teeth, and I think he was a little unwell. God bless him, but he opened the door and he was pretty loud, and we didn't know what he was saying, and I was with my manager at the time, and he was loud and began to get aggressive. I couldn't tell what he was saying, but he was getting aggressive, and he slammed the door in our face. And it's like, it didn't faze me whatsoever. Now, the guy I was knocking with, he was pretty upset by it. But I was like, after that moment, I was like, I got this. If I can handle something that, that's scary and unpredictable, we're good. And I've heard people have like guns pulled on them and stuff like that. But, that hasn't happened to me, knock on wood there. But yeah, the entrance was just absolutely terrifying. But again, I didn't have a choice with my inconsistency and my jobs in the past. It was like, no, like you have to stop here. You're 30 years old. It's time to get real. And 31 at this time. It's time to get real and just buckle down. And, I kept looking at my brother-in-law and seeing what he has and what it took for him to get there. And I was like, I got to do that exactly. Now on his end, he had the benefit of actually being a roofer before he started sales. I didn't have that, So yeah, my first company, they taught me a lot about selling roofs and stuff. They gave me some good base knowledge.
That was going to be the next question, is that a lot of the times people get into this industry and they're kind of thrust out into the wild and not really given a whole lot of training. And I think that's really the downfall to a lot of talented people that probably could be very successful, but the discouragement of, I don't even know what I'm trying to sell here. I have no idea how to present this. I don't know anything about roofing. It can get into your mind. And I train people a little bit differently. And I tell them, roofs are roofs. I prefer training people that have no experience, because that way they don't have any preconceived notions. They don't have any bad habits. And I tell them, people buy people first. And if you can present yourself as a professional and you don't, make up a bunch of stuff that's crazy, that homeowners can see through, you can do okay as long as you're a pretty decent person. So let's talk a little bit about the training that you received when you got into the industry. You just said, it was pretty decent. What was the training consistent of when you got started that kind of got you out there to where you actually felt a little confidence about it and said, hey, I can answer some questions confidently. I'm not worried that the homeowner's going to ask me something that I don't know. What was that experience like for you getting into it?
So my manager, the first thing he did in the first company was had me watch this video that was about an hour. It's available on YouTube. I think it's quite popular too. But it was a video that literally explained how to replace a roof from start to finish. And honestly, like I went from knowing nothing, like I knew what a shingle was, to knowing so much after watching that 1 hour video. And then, we went over the video and stuff, and he asked if I had any questions. And that was so beneficial. And then learning my product, what I was selling, that was most important. Now, I will say, somebody could teach you so much about the product, but it's going to be far more beneficial to do the research on your own and do it at your own pace, because that's something in this industry that I noticed too, is like, first of all, if you're not self-motivated, you're screwed. Like if you're not like, again, like if you're not saying I need to do this, you're done for, because it is going to take some time on your own to figure it out. Like my sales strategy is 100% different than most people I know. And it's really by the Bible, honestly. Like there's a guy that I told at one point, like he's like really into it and he wanted to know how I did it. And it was hard to tell him how I sell. So, when it comes to training, there is only so far you could really go with it. The initiative is what matters the most, because even Blake says this all the time. Like, my way is different than your way. It's going to be different. Like, start with the basics. And I think the best strategy in terms of training is go knock doors. Like, be a canvasser. Don't be a salesperson yet. And I think that's a really big, it's a big thing that people don't want to do when they know the industry. So, because, like I said, when you go into it, knocking doors is tough. But, I think in terms of training, we should be knocking doors, understanding to kind of how to sell the company and sell when you knock the door, kind of gravitate towards that. And that will help you find your flow. So yeah, that's my take on that, really.
I think that's absolutely correct. And that's the way I believe too. No two people are the same. I have a different energy than some of the people that I've trained. A lot of people are, analytical and they're engineer type personalities. I am the exact opposite. I can go in, make a few jokes, kind of lighten the mood up a little bit, and then just, earn people's trust through just being a decent person, showing up on time, looking like I belong in the industry, and kind of presenting myself as a professional. And I really love what you just said there, because there is no, one size fits all approach to this. And that's another thing I think our industry is lacking, is I think that a lot of people may get trained one way by someone that may have a type A personality or whatever, and they may be completely opposite of that. And it's discouraging when you can't put the things together, because, this guy's telling me what I should be saying, or I have a script and the script just isn't working for me. And I think roofing sales is probably one of those things where more people could be hugely successful if they just understood it the way that you just explained it. And they said, okay, make it my own, be my own person, kind of, use the tools that I've been given, but also create my own approach. And I really respect that. So you get out there, you're knocking doors, you're talking to people, you're getting beat up. Like you say, it's not easy. And sometimes it's not fun. At any point during these initial days in your career, getting the door slammed in your face by the first guy you meet, and it kind of sets the tone. Did you get discouraged at any point and say, maybe this isn't what I think it's going to be? Maybe my brother-in-law's in a different market. Maybe he just knows different people. He's a different kind of guy. Did you ever get to the point early on where you thought, man, bartending doesn't look so bad after all?
Well, I couldn't say that I've ever been discouraged. I mean, I guess I've been discouraged to a sense, but like the thing is, like when I said I have to make this work, I meant that. Like there was no way out. It was either death or be successful, no one believed in me around me. Not a single person except for my mother. My brother-in-law, he was there when he could be, but he's a busy guy. He's 670 miles away from me. We don't talk every day. We talk once in a while. I want to go up to see him. But yeah, dude, no one believed in me. And, that's as a result, I lost a lot in my life as a result of that, but I couldn't give up, but like I can see where discouragement comes into play, especially if you have backup options. If you're okay with working an hourly job, or, if you're just okay with not working out, there's so many places of discouragement. First of all, like not only with knocking doors, but when you make the sale. And if you're with a company and say that the job comes up short and you lose on your commission because of that. Now, I don't experience that in my current company, but a lot of companies do that. And it is logical because the company needs to make money too. But that can be very discouraging. That could bring you down. I will say, there was scenarios in my past where that did happen, and that was a bit discouraging to me. I felt like I was disrespected, but at the same time, it only makes sense, really. So I think those areas of discouragement were, pretty much where I kind of saw it, and even though people didn't really believe in me, yeah, I mean, it broke my heart in so many ways, but it didn't steer me away from doing what I was going to do. And as a result of that, my first year in the industry, I cleared $1 million in sales, and that's pretty big, considering it really kicked off in June. So, my goal this coming year is 2.5 million. And it's a matter of disregarding all of that discouragement at all costs.
Yeah, and you're so right. I mean, I had a lot of people tell me, when I started in sales, I had already been in the industry 15 years and I was in distribution. I used to be the delivery driver that loaded the roofs with the conveyor belt truck. I did that. I got to go to Charlotte and open a branch of a roofing supply company for the company I'd been with. Learned a lot about that side of the business. And then I randomly ended up in Texas and I meet a guy and I go to work for this company, and it was not easy to begin with. I'm not going to lie. I thought that my knowledge of the product was just going to roll over and everybody was going to be super impressed that I knew all the specifications of how a shingle was made and I can explain the copper content. And I'll tell you, the nails go in at 13 and 3/8 and there's this much space. But the reality is nobody cared. And it took me a little while to get knocked down, to get beat up a little bit before I started to realize, okay, I need to learn how to sell and I need to learn how to differentiate myself from people that are just basically going in and reading that presentation off of a piece of paper or, just saying the same thing regardless. But my success was not immediate in roofing sales. I almost got out of it before I learned it and really got inspired again. And it was friends, family, you should go do something else. You've already proven you can't do this. And I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, but at the same time, it wasn't ever something where it was like, I'm going to show you, because in reality, I understand that. And people close to you don't want you to fail. They don't want to see that happen. And I think sometimes encouragement by discouragement is the way that they try to do it. But I don't think that's a great way to go about helping somebody. So when this started happening to you and you start noticing, hey, some of these people they're not really in my corner like I thought they were. And they're not as rah for me in my new career as I would like. Did you have to make an adjustment to the people that you were around, the way that you perceived the people that were around you, or the way that you behaved around them based on the fact that they were kind of, maybe treating you like you were, getting into roofing and maybe not quite being as cheerful towards you as they could possibly be?
Well, in this scenario, I saw it coming, it's, there was no sign of me ever getting into the industry until September of 2023. Never even talked about it. It was a split second decision, but it felt good. So I expected it, and when people around us aren't going to be hustlers like we are, and we can't expect them to be. A lot of people are very at peace with working their normal jobs, and we need those people. And my thing is, if you're at peace with yourself, that's all that matters. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you think working at McDonald's is the best job in the world. If you're at peace with yourself, good. So the thing is, like, I'm not going to understand that. So I don't expect them to understand that on my part either. So I expected it going in. And a little bit more of my background. I used to live in Los Angeles and I was pursuing the music industry. And, things were working out in my favor until COVID happened. But like when I went out there, talk about discouragement and disbelief and like, what are you doing? Like, that's insane. I had thick skin coming from that because that was insane, but I met the right people at the right time there and things were going to work out if COVID didn't happen. But, by the grace of God, that didn't happen because I'm really happy I'm out of it. I'll tell you that much. But, Yeah, just adapting to the discouragement and the disbelief was very easy for me. And it was just like, just wait and see, like I'm going to do this, just wait and see. And I didn't let it in, I didn't let it in and bother me, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is human nature sometimes, unfortunately, for some people, you say at peace, and I can see that side, but I also think that people get complacent. And I think that
Mhm.
it magnifies their complacency when they see somebody that's actually out there really stepping off into something completely different, completely, new to them, and trying to find success and being willing to get beat up and knocked down and all that stuff. And I think a lot of times people try to discourage others so that it doesn't magnify their complacency. And I
Absolutely.
think that's what happened with me. I had a lot of people that were just happy with getting by and getting that paycheck on Friday or whatever it was. And it does look kind of crazy from the outside if you're looking in and you don't understand that the possibilities that, this can do for you. So I can definitely appreciate that. I've lived it myself and I've seen it firsthand. And it's awesome that you don't get discouraged and you continue to put your head down and keep moving forward. So you get in there, your early days are still a little bit rough. You're working your way up. You're trying to figure out how to do this. You're learning the industry. You're learning the roof systems. Then comes this magical day where you get your first roof sale, right? Tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about your first roof sale, and then we'll kind of branch off from that. But what was that all about for you?
So yeah, that was my first sale. It wasn't from knocking doors. It was an inbound lead. And she had a roof leak that was pretty terrible. And I went up to the roof and I did the inspection on it, and there's so much wear and tear. Like I just knew filing a claim would have been a waste of time because the granules were so far gone. So I was just very honest with her. And she said, okay, well, the last guy said I should file a claim. I'm like, I don't agree. I was like, it's going to be a waste of time, and you need a new roof right now because you have a bad leak. So, I told her, I can write up a quote for you. So I read up a quote for her, and she agrees to it like almost immediately. She's like, how can I do financing? And they were kind of tough cookies throughout the process, honestly, like pretty strict. And I understand. It would be too, to be real with you. Like if I don't know this guy and he's selling me a roof and I'm paying, $14,000 for it, I'm going to be a stickler myself. So,
Absolutely.
when you're outside the industry, you don't understand. Um, so by the time, it was done, and there was a process, we had to do a lot of redecking and stuff. And I had to tell her, hey, there's going to be an upcharge on this decking. Just let you know, like, but we have to do it. And she kind of had some pushback on it, but then she was cool with it. And then the day I picked up the second check, she was so bubbly and so nice. And I'm like, what's going on here? And she's like, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. It looks beautiful. And she goes, I'm sorry I was so, stressful throughout the process, but I just want to make sure things are getting done right. And I was like, I completely get it. And she wrote us a great review and everything. And, that's when I realized like the money is good, cool, right? But the satisfaction and like making people feel comfortable and happy, that's when I realized like, no, this is for me, because that lady is so ecstatic and her home is secure. Her biggest investment is secure. And she doesn't have to worry about anything now because we helped her out. That was when I was like, okay, this is me. This is my thing. I'm locked in. I'm here for people. Cool, money, whatever, but people first and foremost now. And that helped me a lot in the future.
Yeah, and I love that because my mindset is the same way. It's like if you help people and you do what's right and you're ethical, everything takes care of itself. And I love that it was a situation where your first sale comes from, somebody else that's a competitor came in and said, "Hey, I suggest you file an insurance claim." Obviously, to a homeowner, that seems like the easiest route. That's the least out of pocket. That's
Mhm.
the thing that makes the most sense logically, but you were able to convince them, hey, look, it's beyond the point of no return. I don't think that this is going to be the best option for you. I did a roof like that a couple months ago down here in San Antonio where two other roofers told them to file a claim. I went over to their house on a Sunday afternoon and we sat down and I said, look, here's what I see on the roof. Here's what would be considered, a hail impact. Here's what would be considered wind damage. This stuff doesn't apply to what's on your roof. And I was able to educate them, and they said, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do it. We believe in you because you're very, you could be doing it the easy way too. And I realized, if they would have just said, no, we're going to file the claim, it's over for me. So getting over that hump and showing someone, hey, this is why it's going to work for you. This is why taking $14,000 out of pocket versus, a $2,000 deductible is in your best interest. That can't help but boost your confidence. So you get that first job under your belt, you encounter some stuff along the way. Like you say, I think the first customer always needs to be a little bit difficult to deal with throughout the project, because if everything goes like butter, you're not going to ever really appreciate what you went through to get to where you're going. And my first customer was, boy, it was brutal. Like I wanted to, I can't even say publicly what I wanted to do to this guy because he was just driving me insane. But he falsified documents. He was trying to make all kinds of weird accusations. And it was like, bro, if this is what the roofing industry is going to be, I don't want to do it. But then at the end, after everything was done and settled, the guy ended up being all right, and he said, hey, I apologize. I just, I had him dead to rights. And I was like, dude, if you're going to lie and I'm going to lose my job like this, I'm going to let you know how I feel about you as a human being. And we ended up having a nice come to Jesus meeting right there in his front yard. Everything worked out. But once you get that first one under your belt, now you realize, like you said, okay, the purpose isn't money driven. It's being of service to people. It's helping people in their moment of need, when they're at their most vulnerable, and they're trying to protect their, in most cases, their biggest asset. And now you've got your vision. You understand, okay, this is what I'm here to do. This is what I'm going to do. Now it gets a little bit easier for you. So it's time to start going and racking up some big wins. And the first sale, I'm assuming, was with the first company before you ended up moving over to where you're at now, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So you told me clearly that this first company, you got your first deal, but at some point you also realized maybe this isn't the best situation for me. So tell me about that moment of realization and what it took for you to say, okay, in spite of the fact that I'm starting to get some success, I'm getting some confidence about myself, maybe I'm not in the right environment just yet, and I need to find a different way. What kind of things led up to your realization that needed to happen and that you needed to make a change?
I think it's a very positive thing, honestly. Like there were some negative aspects of working for that company. There's I lost some money on some jobs that I shouldn't have lost. And, that was a big turning point for me. But I was serving this amazing custom home builder. We were doing roofs on his house, and we were also doing some deck work as well. So I was walking around one of the houses one day, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. I don't want to just do roofing. I want to go beyond that. Like, I love construction. My dad was a mason growing up, and then my brother-in-law in roofing. Like, I've been around it, and most of my family did construction, and I was finding such a passion for it. And I'm like walking through this house that's completely unfinished, and I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I would like to be a custom home builder at some point in my life. So I was like, all right, where do I start? That was the first brainstorm. I got to go with somebody that's doing roofing, siding, and gutters so I can learn that. So that's what I look for companies that did that. And, then that's how I ended up with New Beginnings, really, because New Beginnings does everything. They do everything but build a house. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to dive into this, learn all about that. I'll start with just roofing and just kind of pick the brains in the company, And, after that big storm, we ended up doing, roofing, siding, windows, some doors, garage doors. And I started selling upgrades like crazy too for patios and stuff. So that was kind of like my transition. I want to go beyond what I know. I don't know if I completely plateaued in roofing. I wouldn't say I did. I think there's always more to learn. I still have to dive into commercial and stuff like that. But, it was just like, all right, it's time to move on to something bigger. And also, I wanted to be in a team environment. And at this point with that last company, it was me and the manager, and that was it. So I just really had to dive in and take care of myself, because I was trying to take care of that company first and foremost. And I'm like, I'm not in a position to do that. I don't know enough to do that. So there was just a lot of factors that led to that transition.
Yeah, and I think having the maturity to understand that and to say, look, I need something bigger. I definitely am convinced that I can do this and it's going to be something great. And I love the fact that you made that move and you're an action taker and you're willing to continue to move forward regardless of the obstacles placed in front of you. I love that you said, hey, my first day we get hit with a generational storm, one that is like the biggest that we've seen in decades. And all of a sudden you go from a one-man deal with you and your manager. You're now part of a larger scale company. So when a storm like this hits, the larger scale company just starts getting inundated with leads, opportunities galore. Now it's like, well, wait a minute. I went from this over here to a completely opposite scenario. Now it's maybe a little bit overwhelming to you. So how did that look when you get hit with that first storm? Were you a little bit concerned that maybe you're not going to be able to keep up, or maybe it's going to just get so big that you're going to get lost in the shuffle? What did that feel like in that moment when you realized, I just, for lack of a better term, I just kind of hit the jackpot here and the sky is the limit, but I'm also still pretty limited with my experience, with my knowledge. And, I've only done a few projects here and there and not really acclimated to this new company. So what did that feel like for you when it hit? Were you joyous? Were you concerned? What was your mindset at that moment?
Blake called me the night of the storm, and I don't think he slept either, and I didn't sleep. And I was so excited. I was like, and I knew, like, I'm like, hey, I don't have the knowledge for this yet, but this is going to be the best way to learn when I'm given no choice but to learn. So I was ecstatic and I was ready to go for it. And I was just boots to the ground. And Blake knew very little about me. He knew they hired me as a site supervisor to start because it was a slow season. Like, we weren't selling. So yeah, I was just very excited. I knew that I was going to have to learn along the way. And I will tell you, like, my lack of knowledge in that scenario, it kind of affected how many I could have gotten, because me and Blake were like competing. Like, I was like, I was like, how many did you get this week? He goes, I got 20. And I'm like, dang, I got 10, like, I'm like, and I kept telling him, I'm like, I'm going to beat you, and I knew that was ridiculous. I knew Blake was going to outrun me no matter what. But it was the competitive edge and the excitement. And when it came down to it, with dealing with the claims and everything, I was overwhelmed, but I loved every second of it. I was like, I want this all the time. Like, I want to work these 80-hour weeks, 80 to 100-hour weeks. There was 2 weeks where I think Blake and I worked just nonstop for 7 days a week. And it was exciting. And it's so funny because in that moment, and I would say in that first like 2 months when we were dealing with that neighborhood, I didn't even think about money. That's the crazy part. Like, I was just achieving goals. I was selling upgrades even at some point. There was a house in that neighborhood where I started with a claim. It was going to be about a $30,000 job. We are at $85,000 after selling upgrades to that house. And, it's just because my excitement about it, and finding out the products that we could do. I implemented a new product to the company as well that we now put on houses, which is it's a faux stone in the company. I got a hold of them. They're great, man. They're so good, and they give us good discounts. And that made me give a discount to the customer. So it was just like the excitement was overwhelming and extremely motivating. Like, and I learned everything. Like I said, I could sell a shingle roof. Now I know siding, different types of siding, the aspects of siding. Dude, I didn't know what J channel was, and then and Windows, like, it's crazy. It was so cool. And I would do it over and over again.
Yeah, and that's the oh man, you got me all fired up now. I love that mindset. And the one thing that I always ask about stuff like this is, okay, I've been in this for a long time. I've worked hailstorms in the past. I've worked big storms on that front end, right? Like you say, you're not thinking about it. You're just out there talking to as many people as you can, signing as many deals as you can. And this is a great win for me, right? there's also a flip side to that. Production, the amount of time it takes to go from that contract signature to that final payment, and then you getting paid yourself. And when you start to stack up a huge stack of deals, this gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden you're stretching yourself thin because you're using your resources to get out there in the field to make it happen. And you don't have anything coming in for a little while. So when you start getting into the point now where, all right, TJ, we're about to start building your roofs. We're about to start doing your siding jobs. We've got these upgrades we're going to be building. This does sometimes take away from your ability to start selling. But did you ever have a point where it was like, whoa, I'm getting myself into a pretty big hole right here. I'm owed, 6 figures potentially on the other end, but the company has to go through this process and the company has to make sure everything goes right. Everything has to be built and it has to be, collected before I get anything out of it. Did you have any concern at that stage about that aspect of the process as it plays out?
Well, Blake gave me a heads up right since the beginning. He's like, some of these jobs aren't going to go through for maybe a year, and he gave me that expectation. So, and I just trusted Blake 100% from the get-go. And that kind of softened the blow on it. There's jobs that we haven't started yet. We're battling insurance companies. But in the same breath, I'm so grateful for that because I'm learning how to work with these insurance companies. A lot of them are just very shady, and it's very unfortunate. Some are really great. And honestly, I've noticed in that process, it depends on the adjuster as well. But yeah, I think though it can be frustrating, not getting paid for a job and having to work so long on it for, months on end. It's such a good learning curve because the thing is like, okay, what went wrong in those situations? Why didn't I go faster than it should have? And, you just take accountability. Like my thing is when something goes wrong or something doesn't feel right, I immediately say, hey, that's my fault. And then I analyze it. Like, why is it my fault? And sometimes it comes out, it's not my fault. But if I can do that and just take full accountability, even if other parties are involved, there's going to be a different outcome for me in the long run. Like I can fix those issues that were my fault. Right. So, yeah, it didn't really bum me out, and the thing is, honestly, it's creating more consistency and pay, it's making it easier to budget too. Because, if you get a lump sum of money at once, like let's say 1 month, you get all that money, then a lot of people aren't going to be very responsible for it. It's like, all right, you just got $75,000 in 1 month. You're going to get pretty excited, especially if you're like if you're like me and you don't come from money and you've never seen that kind of money in your bank account. It's like, it's terrifying, but by the grace of God, I've gotten really good with my finances too. But it's still, I mean, yeah, sure. I'd probably drop 10 grand real quick, if I saw 75 hit my account, So yeah, it's a good thing and a bad thing. And like I said, the learning experience is extremely important. And I think some people need that struggle. You have to figure that out because it's going to happen in this industry if you're selling through insurance.
Yeah. And boy, that you nailed that one, my friend. I love that answer because you're right. You typically with our industry, it is people that are in the same boat, didn't come from a lot of money, got into this because, there is a relatively low, barrier of entry to get into roofing, and not everybody is well trained. Not everybody is educated as far as how to handle those types of scenarios. I've seen people that sell tons of jobs on the front end and they never make it to the light at the end of the tunnel there because they just aren't capable of having that mindset of saying, look, I've got to be responsible still. I've still got responsibilities that I have to take care of. I know that there's going to be money coming down the road. And once you get past that first wave of it and money's no longer the issue, you're spot on. It just keeps going. And now you've got the consistency to where it's like, hey, I can kind of take a deep breath and I'm ready to rock and roll now. But it is a little stressful when you get going, especially as someone that's as new to the industry as you are. And along the way as well, not every job goes perfectly. You've got the problems with the insurance. Like you said, you're dealing with claims, you're dealing with adjusters who get out there. I love adjusters for the most part, but they're under a lot of stress as well. Your employer is paying you to go out there and cover as much as you can for as little as possible. Sometimes they're saying, hey, if you can deny a few of these for us, we might give you a little bit more of a Christmas bonus. You've got to also learn how to work in concert with those folks and not get on their bad side, not have any kind of issues like that. Homeowners can get frustrated by the process as well. And at the end of the day, they look to you for guidance. And, if something doesn't go exactly as it's planned, things can fall apart pretty quickly. And it can become a real disaster. So let me ask you this. Have you had any of these situations happen to you yet in your career where everything has just kind of fallen apart? It's become a complete nightmare for you. You've had to deal with things that you didn't expect to ever have to deal with in your roofing sales career. Homeowners getting mad, threatening, I'm going to sue you, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to leave a bad review. Have you had to deal with any of those negative scenarios throughout this first process of, getting completely swamped, getting people on board? Because everybody's happy on the front end, but as it drags out, they get more and more frustrated, and it happens to the best of us. Have you had to deal with any of that stuff yet?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, like I would say one of my smallest jobs. I think first and foremost, we have to go into every sale with this mindset: be completely agreeable, but also hold your ground. I keep that very stern. Like, my company is going to be taken care of, I'm going to be taken care of, and you're going to be taken care of. Those are the three main priorities. But if one goes against the other, we have a problem, So if you're going to come against me and my company and not want to pay out what's due, then we have a problem, So, but other than that, I'm very agreeable. So there's this customer that I had to deal with, and they're trying to skim money off the top and, save some insurance money on a small project. And firstly, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not here to scam insurance companies. There's no way. Like, I want to work in correlation with them, regardless of how aggressive they are against us. I don't care. Like, my morality stays the same. I respect those companies. They're here to make money. We're here to make money. And but if they're not taking care of their customers, it's a whole different ballgame, So yeah, there's a customer where he was trying to skim money off the top, and it's just like, well, I know a way to make sure the insurance company doesn't pay for that. Just so you know, it's on the RCV check. Like, if you don't want to pay us that line item, insurance ain't giving it to you. And, I'm bold but respectful. Like, I'm an is what it is kind of guy, and I'm not going to let you commit any kind of fraud. I'm not going to let you try and, screw us out of money. And I'm going to make sure the job is done 100% correct. Those are my priorities. And if you try to disturb that, then I'm going to come back at you. And I'm going to do it respectfully and kindly, because I treat everybody with love. But the thing is, like, this insurance game is not who's going to make the most money or whatever. The insurance game is about making sure your house is restored back to previous condition, but better. And that is my goal. And no one's getting screwed over in the process. So difficult customers, and especially long-term claims. I have one right now, and the lady is amazing. She gets frustrated, but we filed this claim in June, and here we are, almost end of January, and we haven't even started. Not everything's approved that should be approved. And she's been frustrated with us. I wouldn't say with us, but she gets frustrated in the process. She knows it's the insurance company, but she just gets really stressed out. Like, this is her home. She loves her house. She wants it back to how it is. And there are some things in the policy that say that certain things don't have to get covered. And unfortunately, that's the bottom line. It's in the policy. There's nothing we could do about it. But, her stress, I think that's what hurts me the most in this industry, really, now that I think about this, is when customers are stressed with the insurance company, and they're to the point of like tears, like, it's out of my control at that point. We're doing what we can to get these claims approved, but that's what motivates me to go a little bit harder than the insurance company. But it's just like, I think that's the hardest part, is them having to wait for it, them having to go through the process, especially if they care so deeply about their home, which you should. That's the hard part of it, for sure.
Yeah, and you're spot on with that. We have to maintain composure throughout. It can be very frustrating. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you and say that every job I've ever done has gone rosy and perfect. I've had, screaming matches with adjusters in the front yard in front of homeowners in my career. And it wasn't something I went in intending to have happen, but I also want to let my homeowners know, look, I'm here on your behalf and I'm going to do everything I can to serve you. If I see something that I don't agree with, I am quite happy to get right to the point about it. And I will tell a homeowner, hey, look, this is not right. And I don't believe this person is doing you service. I don't believe that what you're paying for is actually what you're getting here. But the reality also is that the way that the things have been framed by society, by the media, so on and so forth, you see these commercials on TV, we're good neighbors and we've got great hands and all this stuff. And contractors are the ones who are painted as the criminals. These roofers, they're just probably going out and buying drugs with all your money and they're just greedy and they're trying to get everything from it. So it's a fine line that we have to walk to maintain that trust with the homeowner and not have, perception take over and then say, well, wait a minute, if these guys were so bad, why are they sponsoring Super Bowl ads and why are they doing all this? They're obviously helping a lot of people. And it's like, well, no, you have to realize someone's grandma probably is paying for that Super Bowl commercial off her claim that was denied or something that was minimized along the way. And you've also got people in our industry who, I was just talking to a public adjuster at lunch about this yesterday, maybe regardless of what you get in the settlement, always wants just a little bit more. Well, we deserve more. You could be getting $800 a square for a shingle roof and still, well, we need to supplement for more. We need to do this. And I think the state of things right now being what it is a combination of everybody just kind of taking it for granted for a while, assuming that the faucet was never going to turn off. But I guess what I'm saying is, being able to maintain that trust and have that situation where it's like, hey, I'm your guy. I'm here for you. It's difficult. And it leads to a lot of people's demise in this industry. Being able to see it the way that you're seeing it is very refreshing because, a lot of people get into this early and they immediately get overwhelmed and they just think, my goodness, this isn't worth all the problems. It's not worth all the headaches. These people are now accusing me of things because someone else told them that that's what our industry is. And it's nice to see someone that can maintain that. And I can tell just by our conversation, you keep a nice level head throughout the process. You're not going to be out there yelling at adjusters like I was and stuff like that. And it can build more credibility, which is what we're ultimately looking to do. Because if you take care of your homeowner and you do everything the way that you say it's going to be done and you're completely upfront and transparent, that leads then to them giving their friends and their family the good word or going on social media and saying, hey, TJ did an amazing job. I love this guy. If you need a roof, he's your go-to guy. So we talked a little bit about the difficult parts. We talked about, the homeowners that love their homes. They're frustrated because they're going through this. At the end of the day, they're ecstatic with the results. So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell me about one of your examples of someone that you've started at the process at the beginning. Maybe they're a little bit hesitant just based on, again, society and the things that they've been fed. Not all roofers are honest. I'll be the first to understand that. Of a very good example in your market where, like Blake told me, they're taking tens of thousands of dollars from people and just disappearing. So you have to overcome that stigma. You walk someone who maybe at the beginning of the stage is not 100% bought into it. They're thinking, man, I don't know. My roof's not leaking. Why do I need to go through this? And after you get to the end, you've got someone that's ecstatic. Tell me about an example of someone that you've got to work with in your young career where you've kind of gone through that process with them and you've taken them from being hesitant to saying, you know what, I want to be your number one advocate. I want to tell my friends, family, people at church, everyone that I see across, the grocery store aisles and all that stuff. Do you have some examples of people like that you've gotten to deal with so far?
Yeah. I would say that goes back to probably my favorite customer right now. We've been working on his house for months now, doing all these upgrades. But at the beginning, there's obviously everybody's getting bombarded in this neighborhood, and I could sense the hesitancy. He is a very kind person. Him and his wife are very kind people, but it just felt like it wasn't going to be a fit. Like I didn't think it was going to happen. And, I did the inspection for him and everything. And it just didn't, I don't know. To me, it was like, he's got a different contractor in mind. He's going somewhere else, end of story. So I kind of gave up on it. I did the inspection. I said, hey, get a hold of me when the adjuster comes out and we'll go from there. And I didn't think he was going to call me. Like, I was like, I lost that 100%. And, then he did call me. We had the adjuster meeting and very, very short, like just super short with me. And I was like, dang, is he really going to go with us or is he just kind of using us, But no, for sure. He called and, I got the contract together, went over there, sat down, went over the whole roof process and the siding process. And he's like, oh, do you guys do stone? And I was like, well, we can do like stone veneers, we don't do actual stone. They're pretty cool though. And I show him the stone veneers. And long story short, like I said, I mentioned this before, that was a $30,000 claim. And now we're at $85,000 in that house. We did a full residing. We put gemstone. We put cedar impressions up top, and now we're doing a deck over on his front patio. And then we're doing a Renaissance patio in the backyard next to the patio that already exists, and now they're talking about doing a second floor renovation to expand their bathroom size. So, man, I'll tell you what, like, I love this guy. Like, I love going over when we're doing stuff. I love talking to him. And it's just one of those things like you don't know. So don't stop trying. Like, there are going to be those people. And I'm going to give credit to my brother-in-law for this one. He says there are cactuses and there are, I think he said apricots. I don't know, whatever fruit has a pit, and he said, the cactus, the outside is real tough. They're going to be difficult at first, but once you could break through and get to the center, it's nice and soft. There's great people, best people to work with. They're going to be your best customers. Those people that are very, very soft and very excited at the beginning, likely you could lose those people. That has proved itself tremendously. The people that I thought would be the best from the beginning have ran with insurance checks. They have went with different people, and it's like, hang on a second. I thought we were good. Like, we had a good friendship. I thought things were going great. But those tough customers, once you work through them, they're the best experiences and the best learning curves too. Because oftentimes those are people that I've kind of noticed that are pretty much, they're very, very into their finances, which that's been a pattern I've noticed. I'm not sure how really true that is, but it's the people that are really good with their finances and they might go further like this guy has with, the project, that rather than just doing the insurance claims. Like, they're feeling somebody out that they can really trust and they can know that is going to do a good job. And that's just the pattern I've noticed. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but for me, that's been my experience.
Absolutely. And it kind of goes back to the example that we started with where, these other people are telling you need to file a claim. I'm going to explain to you why you shouldn't. You're building credibility throughout this entire process. Everything that you say, you're keeping your word. You're showing up when you say you will. The company is keeping their word and everything is staying on schedule the way it should. And the more you get to know somebody, the more you trust them and the more you believe in them. And like you say, when someone gets a storm, especially a storm of the magnitude of what you guys are working, and you're watching the news and seeing, these roofing contractors are stealing thousands of dollars from elderly people and they're disappearing, it really is an uphill climb. And one of the unfortunate things, but again, it's human nature, is a lot of people don't have a lot of training in what we do. You get out there and, like you say, some of these are a little discouraging on the front end, and those end up being the gems that you end up really loving to work with. But you almost walk out of a house sometimes and say, I'll never hear from this guy again. And they kind of get discarded and you don't think about it. But the people that come back and call back and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, it's me, TJ. Just wanted to check in with you, see how things are going, maybe stopping by randomly and just, cutting up with them for a few minutes. And then they see you're not in this just for a quick paycheck. You didn't discard them because it's an insurance claim and, I don't think it's going to work. Or a lot of people don't know how to sell retail deals, quite frankly. And I think that our industry is starting to shift that way again. And we've gone through about maybe a 10 to 15 year window where, insurance claims have been our primary source and they've paid well. And you see what's happening in a lot of places around the country. Insurance carriers are getting tight. They're starting to get different policies, higher deductibles, less coverage. It's going to evolve into a situation now where the people that are in it for the right reasons, instead of a quick paycheck, are going to start really shining again. And this is what impresses me about you is you've got that mindset to say, okay, this guy might not call me back, but when he does, you're there, you're prepared. You've got everything ready to rock. You follow up with them. They always say, the 8th to 10th touch with somebody is typically when you get that deal. And most people will follow up one time and say, they're not going with us. They don't have the money. Whatever the excuse may be, that's all it ends up being, because we know that they need the work done. We know that they're in the path of a storm that damaged their property. You see that they're good quality people, but they're reserved and they're guarded because, nobody wants to be the first. That's the mindset of people. One type wants to be the first so they can say, I'm the first one that did it. Look at me. I'm better than all you guys because I jumped out there and my house looks great first. But a lot of people are more reserved and they want to kind of see what happens. They want to see how people's experiences were. And if you maintain that communication, you stay in there, you remain professional throughout, and you just continue to tell them, hey, if you need me, I'm going to be here for you. If something else comes up that you think is a better option, I respect that and I appreciate it. I don't agree, but you're going to make an educated decision, at least to the level of education that you've been given. And it impresses me that you probably are someone that really can educate and get the homeowners to understand what's going on, instead of these guys that knock on the door and just basically say, we'll get the insurance to pay for it, and whatever the insurance says, we'll work off of that. They don't really have a mind of, this is what we're going to do. This is why it's to your advantage. This is why you should work with me. And that's how you get into the industry, and you do $1 million in your first, 6 months, really of being in the grind and doing it. And now you've seen the success. You understand this is what it's like. It's really not that hard if you just do the right thing and you
it's so easy.
To it. Yeah. And I think that's people's biggest problem is they just don't commit to it enough. And, it's brutal. So tell me about this. We're already over our hour, which, I told you I don't have any problem with that. And I'm enjoying this conversation tremendously.
Yeah, me too. Definitely.
What happens next for you? You said, this year your goal is 2.5. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind you're going to hit your goal because you've got it defined. I'm sure you've got it written down and broken down as to what you need to do to get there. What does it look like for you moving forward for the rest of your career? You said you want to someday down the road maybe be a custom home builder. What do you think is going to look like for you, 3, 5, 10 years down the road as you continue to evolve and grow in this industry and with the career that you've now found yourself, a very unusual amount of success at an early rate?
I would say next, let's say 3 to 5 years, deepening my knowledge is my priority, and also getting to know my community. Charleston, the greater Charleston area is growing tremendously. We're at over 900,000 people. I moved here 2021. We were at just over 500,000. So yeah, it's I just want to get to know my community. I want to, and I don't press religion on anybody, but I put God first and foremost. That's the number one thing for me, and that He's the reason for my success. So it's just about creating community, generating more knowledge, and educating more people, and gaining trust. Because the thing is, I would trust me, and that's the most important thing. There's a lot of greed in this industry. There's a lot of ego in this industry. I don't stand for it. You are not better than the person that is uneducated about a roof or siding. You're not. We're all equal. And I really want to gain that trust for me personally and for my company. My company has great moral value. They believe exactly what I believe, which is why we're such a great fit. And I think that's what I want to do. I want to spread the word on who we are, who I am, and just gain a great foundation and help as many people as I possibly can. And also, just if you create a good name and you become a trusted person with all these transplants coming into this area, when they hear your name and people talk about you, it's going to be a positive thing as long as you're sure of it, and that's so important to me. So I think before even career, my goal is to honestly give back to my community as much as I can, financially, with my time and with the people around me. My career goals will fall into place. I want to build my own house out in a place called Allenda. It's kind of the middle of nowhere, but pretty close to the coast. That is my 5-year goal personally. And God's going to guide me along that path to get there. But I don't stay focused on that. That prayer is going to be answered. But my number one thing is just look out for my people, my community.
As long as you're doing it for the right reason, the good is going to come back around, and everything goes full circle in life. And I really appreciate that. And I want to say this before we kind of wind down our episode. I love doing this podcast. It's fun for me. It started off as something completely different than what it is now. It used to be a live show where I had branch managers from my company, and we would cut up and joke and kind of talk about business and other things along the way. It's evolved into what it is now. And I've got a few episodes that I will send out to people that I reach out to and say, hey, you know what? You're not happy with what you're doing. Maybe you would be good with what we do in our industry. And I want to share some of these stories of people that I've gotten to speak with or know over the years. This is going to be one of those episodes because your outlook on it is absolutely amazing. You're the person that if you weren't in South Carolina right now and you were in San Antonio, I'd be like, TJ, come work with me, buddy. Like, we're going to do great things together. And I like people that are truthful. I like people that are transparent and honest about their experiences. And you have been absolutely a joy to get to know here. Down the road, when I'm going to come back to you sometime down the road and say, hey, let's do a follow-up. Let's see how everything's played out. Let's see where you're at in relation to where you thought you were going to be and all that. But you're going to inspire a lot of people. I can tell you that. And this episode is going to be one of those tools that I use to help people see what can come of this and so on and so forth. And a lot of times people watch these episodes and they say, hey, maybe that's a good thing for me. So let's say that someone's watching our episode. There's going to be millions of views at some point. I already told you earlier, my goal is to take down Joe Rogan. So in order for that to happen, I'm going to need like hundreds of millions of people to watch. And we're going to spark somebody's mindset and they're going to say, you know what, I want to give that a shot, but I want to learn a little bit more about this guy. I want to kind of follow his journey. If someone's watching this right now and they say, hey, this guy TJ is pretty cool. I like the way he carries himself. I want to learn more about him. I want to follow him on social media. What are some of the ways that people can follow your journey? Or maybe if they've got a question that they like to ask you, because you're going to find that is going to happen a lot as you continue to grow in this. Younger people are going to reach out to you and say, hey, man, I want to do this. I saw the episode. What are some of the ways that are preferred, or what are some of the ways that they can access you to learn a little bit more about how you're doing and just about you as a person?
So I'm an avid Instagram user. So my Instagram name is TJ in the Holy City. So no spaces there. And I will also be starting a podcast myself. It's going to be, I guess, structured like yours a little bit. We're going to be an in-studio podcast, and it's going to be generalized around entrepreneurship in Charleston, just to help people out. And, it's going to be centralized around faith, but not explicitly to that. And then also, it's going to be a lot of just real conversations like we just had. I'm not going to focus on that person's career, but who they are as a person. I think it's really important to know your community. So once that pops off, I'll be announcing that as well. And Chuck, I hope to be back on here with you someday. This has been amazing. And, I hope to get you on mine one day, and I'll fly out.
That's one of those, like you said, there's no other choice. Absolutely. 100%. I want to do whatever I can to help you along the way. And this has been so cool. So no question asked on that. There's going to be a return visit for you here, and it's going to be my honor to be a guest on your show when everything takes off and
absolutely
you get that going. So
yeah, man. And I'll be happy to fly out there and we could get in a studio space and, really talk,
Yep. That's going to happen for sure.
That'd be awesome, man. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chuck. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure. One thing I do need to mention before we wrap our episode is I need to give thanks to my sponsor. I have a wonderful sponsor in Roofer, and I don't know if you're familiar with Roofer or not, but Roofer is a software package designed for roofers by roofers. I'm making up my own little spiel right here. These guys love when I do this. Designed for roofers by roofers, and basically it's your all-in-one, all-inclusive program that can take you from your initial contact with your client all the way through the final payment and beyond. Everything is included in there for measurement reports, estimates, proposals, collections, you name it. Roofer does it all, and they're only getting better every single week that we do the podcast. I signed my deal with them last week. They are now going to be doing their 3rd year of primary sponsorship for Keepin It Rio. So everybody at Roofer, I love you guys. I say this every week jokingly, but it's not really a joke. If you're not using Roofer in your roofing company, something is wrong with your medulla oblongata, because I preach it every week, and I'm going to continue to do so as long as they will allow me to be a part of that. So thank you to my sponsors at Roofer. Thank you to everybody that watches Keepin It Rio. I've gotten some really amazing feedback this past week from some people that I would have never imagined in my wildest dreams had any idea who I was or what I was doing. But there are some pretty elite level people that watch our show, and I appreciate every single one of you guys. Until we meet again next week, thank you, TJ, for being here. Thank you to all of our viewers. Continue to let everybody know that Keepin It Rio is coming for Joe Rogan. And I always end with the corniest tagline in history, which is keep on keeping it Rio. And I'm also going to end by saying go Bucks, because the national championship game is on Monday, a couple days from now. I'm an Ohio native. You can tell from looking behind me, I've got all kinds of Buckeye stuff going on. Hopefully I don't look foolish, because this is coming out after the game, but hopefully we're celebrating a national championship as well. So thank you, everybody. I had to get that in because I've got some Michigan fans that ride me quite a bit, but we love you all. And until next time, thank you. We'll see you again.